everybody, and welcome to the RiverSource Logistics podcast, where we talk about the latest in e-commerce, Amazon logistics, and ways to take your business to the next level.
My name's Kevin, that's Jen, and that's John. We're the owners of RiverSource Logistics, and we're the largest Amazon 3PL in the country. We've done over 100 million sales in e-com, and we know what it takes to build, scale, and profitably grow your business into a real brand.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about building brands and the entrepreneurial journey of Phil Williams, a super Amazon seller.
Phil is a great friend and an amazingly successful entrepreneur. He's the founder of Coffee Gator, and I'm so excited to have Phil on with us today. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
If you guys have any topics that you want us to cover, please feel free to leave comments below or message us on Facebook or Instagram or in the YouTube comment sections. We want to make sure that we continue to cover topics that work and are interesting for you. So please feel free to reach out to us.
All right, I'll start off first. Thank you, Phil, for sitting down with us today. First question I want to ask you is, how did you get into being an entrepreneur? You know, what's your story?
I would say that I've been through three periods of my life that probably couldn't be much more different. One was as a farmer. I was raised a farmer's son in West Wales. And so I grew up milking cows, driving tractors. Second part of my life was as a journalist, working as a TV producer for the BBC. And third, latest, is entrepreneur. And although those are very different, I found that they've kind of combined in strange ways and have helped me. Certainly being a farmer has helped me a lot as an entrepreneur, because being a farmer basically is being an entrepreneur. It's using the land, it's using elements to produce something that you can sell. And more than that, it's really helped me because it taught me about consistency, it taught me about discipline, it taught me about work, and it also just, working as an entrepreneur right now, whenever things go wrong, I think to myself, it could be worse. I could be having to milk cows on a Saturday night at 8 o'clock at night, being kicked by cows, being shit on by cows, all of those different things. So that and being a journalist, journalism gave me a lot of insights when it came to PR, artistic type stuff, creating stuff. And I guess that's why I am more into brands than your average entrepreneur, because I guess deep down, I'm an artist. I love to create, I love to make things, and I like to make things that look nice.
Awesome. So getting on to your entrepreneurial journey, when you were starting Coffee Gator, what was your intention and what was your vision for the brand?
My intention was to not have to work for the BBC. That was all that I had as my vision. I had been working as a journalist by that time for about 10 years, and I really knew it wasn't for me. I didn't really know what was for me at that point, but I just realized that I didn't want to keep on working for somebody else. And I had a dream of being able to work remotely and living in Barcelona. So those were the two visions that I had. I didn't have anything much bigger than that. I just wanted to quit my job and go move to Barcelona. And I was fortunate enough to do that within, I think, about 8 months of starting the brand properly. I quit my job and moved to Barcelona, and I was very, very happy. And I just recently left Barcelona, but still every now and then I would just remind myself that I was living my dream of being in Barcelona, being in a place, I'm from the UK, if you didn't guess, where the weather is not that great. And I've always loved Spain. So being in a country with sunshine, with a different culture, not having to go into an office, those things were all my dreams. So to this day, I feel very, very grateful.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Want to ask you, if you could go back to the beginning and tell pre-entrepreneur Phil, farmer Phil, and then also new entrepreneur Phil, something, what would you tell them?
I don't know that I would really tell anything, because I look back at everything that's happened, all of the mistakes that I've made, my whole journey, and I would love that it would have been easier. I would love to go back to Phil in 2000 and tell him just to invest in Google shares. That would be great. But everything that has happened along my way has helped me, has forced me to grow. And I happen to believe that what happens to you and all of the challenges are there for a reason. Yeah. So while I would love to be a billionaire right now, and I'm not, I believe that I'm exactly where I need to be. I believe that everything that's happened has happened for a reason. So I don't think that I would give any advice, because all of the things that got put in my path gave me all of the learning that I've needed up to this point. And I'm very sure that I'm going to have a lot more challenges, a lot more things ahead of me that are going to teach me in the same way.
That's so good.
Yeah. Very good. Talking about the challenges, what were some of those biggest obstacles you faced when you started?
I think that the biggest obstacle has always been myself, and continues to be myself in many different ways, but particularly my lack of skills and lack of knowledge when it came to being an entrepreneur. Having never really worked in a real company, because the BBC is not a real company, and a farm is a business, but it's not really a company. You don't have a team of people so much. It's not quite so official. So not having any of that kind of understanding, not understanding how to use spreadsheets, how to use data, not understanding financials, any of that kind of stuff. So not having the technical know-how, the skills, and also just having a lot of mental clutter, a lot of excuses or beliefs, and a lot of different reasons why I couldn't do things. For example, I thought for a long time that I wouldn't be able to understand financials. And I realized that it was after I'd learned and spent some time working on this, I realized that the reason that I thought that is because I had tried to learn quants, because at one point I was thinking about doing an MBA. So I was trying to learn about quants, which is quite complex and maybe not my unique ability, but accounting is very, very different to quants. It's very different. The maths is very simple. It's only adding numbers and subtracting them and a few percentages, whereas quants is a completely different kettle of fish. And yet, from having this experience of quants, telling myself that I couldn't do numbers, I couldn't understand, I wouldn't be able to do this, that was my biggest block to understanding financials. It was just the stories that I was telling myself. So I'm sure to this day that I'm still my biggest obstacle. My thoughts, my beliefs, my mindset, those are the biggest obstacles.
Thanks for sharing that. Phil, I know it's funny because you and I had the same kind of blockade around those financials, and we got to take that awesome Keith Cunningham 4-day MBA together, and that was huge for us, I think. On the same vein, because I know you have a unique thought process around, challenges. What were some challenges that you faced that were the biggest help for you to grow, whether it's business-wise or personal-wise? What were some of those?
I think that perhaps the thing that forced me to grow the most was I had a deal of the day scheduled for Prime Day. I think it was 2018. And we were excited because a deal of the day, normally you do like 10 times the revenue, something like that. And so I factored on the fact that it was going to be Prime Day, which is usually you would do something like 10 times the sales. So 10 times 10, I came up with a number for what I thought we could sell that day. And so to be able to sell a huge amount of volume, I think that we forecast that we were going to do like 1 million in a day or 2 million. I don't even remember anymore. But to be able to sell that much, you need a lot of stock. And to have a lot of stock, you need to put a lot of cash in. And to put a lot of cash in, that's a lot of risk. So we went ahead with it. We invested the money, and it was a truly horrible experience because there were so many logistical challenges. I still to this day don't know why, but our shipment got sent to the wrong port, and there were all kinds of problems trying to get the shipment delivered to Amazon. There were delivery drivers that weren't working or turned up and there wasn't a delivery spot. And the thing that it taught me so much is because I was so stressed, I was so scared by this huge amount of money and so frustrated. I was waking up in the middle of the night and I just couldn't get my head around. I couldn't accept what was happening. And it was the most stressful thing at that point that I'd ever experienced. But because it was so stressful and because there was nothing that much that I could do beyond what I was already doing, I kind of reached a tipping point where I realized that I just had to accept. I had to accept the stress that I was in rather than tensing up and fighting about it, against it. And when I say fighting, not fighting actually doing anything, but just kind of grinding your teeth and forcing against it, which doesn't do anything. I realized that since I was doing all that I could, there was nothing to do other than accept it. And as soon as I accepted it, I just felt so much more peaceful. And I gave myself permission to feel stressed and to feel worried about it. And bizarrely, giving myself permission to feel stressed, giving myself permission to feel worried, made the worry go away. And so that was a game changer for me in my own happiness, in my own ability to deal with stress, because after going through that extreme amount of stress, I never really worried or stressed out about things in the same way afterwards. So very challenging, very difficult, but I wouldn't change the experience because of what it taught me.
Yeah, I always feel like my stress receptors have been like worn down to like a nub where they don't really work as well as they used to. And it's just building this tolerance. I really resonate with what you shared. I think another emotional thing that kind of a lot of entrepreneurs go through is like loneliness, like whether it's people don't understand what you're going through because it's so different, or just it's hard to relate. Did you go through anything like that? And if so, how did you address it? Did you find community? If you can kind of talk into that.
I didn't really experience that, mostly because I'm a complete introvert. So I didn't feel the need to have a lot of people around me or have a lot of counseling that way. And having a team and people working with me, that's always been enough, alongside the people that I know, the friends that I have. And also having people that were coaching me, more in a kind of life coach, managing my emotions, that kind of stuff. That meant that I never really felt lonely or didn't have anyone to share things with. So that made a big difference for me.
Cool.
You talk about like close friends or and things of that nature, like life coaching or coaching you through some of those times. Something that we talk about often with Jen is Masterminds. How did you find that and network into that?
The way that I started out is just going from one event. I went to an event in Barcelona, an Amazon sellers event. And from that, I met a couple of people. And then from that, it encouraged me to go to traffic and conversion. I think that would have been 2017. And because I went to that, then I met somebody there who I kind of already met slightly in Barcelona, but having that second connection, and then she put me in touch with a lot of people, and then she put me in touch with a friend of hers who started his own mastermind a few years ago, which is how I met Jin. And so basically by going to one event, it just kind of spiders out, and one contact leads to another, and another event leads to another, and it kind of creates this web. So I always think that if you make a contact or you go to an event or you meet somebody, you don't really know where that will lead you. Maybe ever. Maybe there's still people that I'm going to meet. Just being here right now on your show is an indirect result of that event that I went to in Barcelona. Maybe if I hadn't gone to that, I would not be here right now. So you never know where it's going to take you.
That is so true. Phil, one thing that I've admired about your journey as an entrepreneur is actually the branding that you do. What do you believe sets Coffee Gator apart as a brand from everybody else?
I think that consistency is one of the big things.
I think we lost him.
Lost him.
Yeah, it's okay. We can edit it.
Oh, no, he's back.
Okay. You hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to ask the question again?
It's okay. I'll start from the beginning.
Okay.
Let me just pick up my trail of thought. I think one of the things that makes the big difference with a brand is making sure that you have consistency. So consistency in colors, in images, in fonts, and defining what is the personality of the brand. So I sometimes use the analogy, if your brand was a person, who would that person be? How would they talk? How would they act? And then having consistency across your brand in all of your messaging. So Coffee Gator, in some ways, it's quite a fun brand. It's a kind of informal brand. So we need to keep that right the way through everything that's done. So through the emails, through the product packaging, through the inserts, all of those kind of things. And also, I would say attention to the unboxing experience. So going back to my farmer days, I remember a farmer who used to take people around and give tours of his farm and show people his cows. And he said that primarily he wanted to promote his herd. He wanted to promote the cows he had because he used to sell livestock. And he used to say that he could persuade people before they'd even seen the cows, before they'd even reached the gate. If they turned up on the yard and things were clean, things were well run, things were organized, the machinery looked new, all of those different things, you could win them over before they'd even seen the herd. So I think of it the same way with branding. If you have great packaging, things look great, you have great images, then people are won over before they've even tried out the product. And you see that in so many different examples. Like if you go to a restaurant and the food on the plate is a mess, then you hate it. It's going to be really hard for that food to redeem itself, that plate to redeem itself, no matter how good it tastes. And similarly, if you have a dish that's served up and it looks amazing, then it's already on a stronger footing. You're biased towards wanting to like it. So I guess taking advantage of that bias, you can sell to people subconsciously an image before they've even tried it out. And I know this is very much true for me because I upgraded the packaging on Coffee Gator a number of years ago. And I had the first sample of the product through in the new packaging. It was a kettle. And when I got the kettle in the new packaging, I was opening the box and thinking, wow, this product is amazing. And I realized that it was the exact same kettle that I'd been selling before, but because subconsciously it's just wired into us. When something comes in a beautiful box and it's well presented, you can't help but interpret it differently. So even though I knew it's the same product, I knew it's exactly the same, it's just the box that it comes in, that instinct or that subconscious programming that we have to love it more is just very, very, very powerful.
That's so true and so crazy at the same time. Like those tweaks, it just changes everything in perception. Very cool. I don't know why horror stories are always kind of like so fun to hear. And in hindsight, you can look back and kind of laugh at it, but have there been any other just moments where you're like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? Like horror stories that you can kind of just share with us as far as building the brand, starting Coffee Gator and your journey?
I could really talk about that for a week. One thing that you can expect in entrepreneurship is that things are going to go wrong. And I guess that really how you deal with those determines your success, because if you can't deal with problems, you can't deal with challenges, then you're not going to go terribly far. So one of the things that comes to my mind is using a warehouse in LA called Western Overseas that we thought they were doing a great job. And I guess it's a theme that I've learned in entrepreneurship, in business, is that if you don't really know, it's very easy to be fooled. So we thought Western Overseas were doing a great job until I brought on somebody in my company who actually was good at numbers, good at analysis, and started to put together a huge body of work, checking every single container of products that we'd ever ordered, every single product that had been sold on Amazon, all of the returns, like accounted for every single unit. And when all was said and done, we'd lost something like 40,000 in value of inventory. And it was just shocking to me that so much could go missing. And I realized that this isn't unique to us. I realized that warehouses in general, they have the ability to just kind of let things disappear if they don't have good reporting, good metrics, and it's very, very dangerous. But actually, ironically, one of the bosses of that company said to me that a warehouse is like a bank. Every time something goes in, it has to be accounted for, and every time something goes out, it has to be accounted for. Unfortunately, in my opinion, their bank does not work very well, and so we lost a lot of money from that. And I just think how much money that Amazon sellers are losing all the time because they trust their warehouse too much.
That's crazy.
Wow. Yeah. That is pretty crazy. What would you tell someone that's getting into e-commerce right now, Phil, or Amazon for that matter? What would you tell them now?
I guess that I would tell them exactly what I wouldn't have wanted to hear 3 years ago, which is to learn the basics, such as understanding profit and loss, understanding your numbers. It's a little bit like when you learn a language. I've been trying to learn some Russian because I've been spending a lot of time in Kiev. And to learn Russian, you really need to learn the alphabet, but it's boring. It's not fun. And I just want to dive in and start learning words and learning sentences, but it's very, very hard to do that when you don't understand the words, how they are pronounced. And it's the same kind of thing with entrepreneurship. If you're someone like me who's a creative at heart, learning numbers is not fun. When I started out, I just wanted to create the look of the brand, the feel of the brand, all of those kind of things. And figuring out your profit and loss, that was just something that I wasn't terribly interested in. So I would say that learning those basics is going to put any entrepreneur way ahead, because your average entrepreneur does not know basic accounting, does not understand basic financials. And I always think that there's this statistic that something like 90% of businesses go under in the first 3 years. I think that if those businesses knew basic accounting and financials and thought a little bit about that beforehand, then there's a way lower chance. That number would be way, way lower. And just as an example that comes to my mind, I went to go visit my parents last year in Wales, and we went to a place that opened up near them that was a cafe and an ice cream place. And it was a beautiful place by a river, and it was beautiful. The food was great. The ice cream was amazing. And when I was there, I just noticed that there were quite a lot of staff there. And they had this machine there. I think it cost them like £20,000 to make the ice cream. And I started thinking about how much money they could be making. And I realized that by the time they paid this 3 or 4 members of staff to be there all day and whatever it cost for the premises, just didn't seem like there'd be much money in it to me. So that place had a fantastic summer while it was open. It was great weather in Wales, which is very, very rare. So there were a lot of people there eating ice cream. It couldn't have gone any better for them. It was busy, it was popular, but by the end of the summer, they decided to close down. And to me, that was a very clear, it couldn't have gone any better for them in terms of the number of customers. That to me just told me that nobody at the start figured out how much money they would need to earn from selling ice creams to be able to cover all of those costs. And I'm sure if they'd done some very basic analysis beforehand, they would have been able to avoid a lot of heartache, a lot of money invested, and a lot of harsh lessons learned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those finances can make or break you. Phil, what do you think has made the biggest impact on your business?
I think that it would probably be hiring the right people. I would definitely say I hired a CFO who really understood numbers. It's a theme that I keep talking about, but I think that without that, things could have been very different, because in reality, I was very lucky to survive my first 2 years in business, because it was just luck. It was just luck that I managed to survive that long without really understanding if I was making money or losing money, without having any financials, without having any kind of dials or measures to understand my business. So taking on a person that understood all of those things and could put all of the right accounting and numbers into place, I'm sure that it changed the course of what would have happened. I dread to think what might have happened if I hadn't hired that person. At that point in my business career. And also by hiring that person, not just having all of those things fixed, but actually being able to learn about all of those different things from that person. So it was kind of like having a lieutenant, a person that was with me in the trenches, a person who was fixing things, but also having a teacher at the same time.
Would you have hired them sooner, or do you feel like there's a certain time that's appropriate to hire someone at that level?
I think that the time to hire that person was probably a lot sooner than I thought, because if you can hire the right person, then they'll just bring so much value.
Yeah.
That in a way that the cost of that person is not significant. But the big problem is hiring a person who is that kind of level. And for me, that was just a case of blind luck. There was no great recruitment process. There was no great strategy behind it. I guess it just comes down to the fact that if you hire enough people, one of them will be good. That's really all it is to it. I don't recommend my method.
No, I mean, you talk about luck a lot, it seems, but I feel like there's definitely something to it that you're doing right that's making you lucky. So you kind of talked about earlier about how one of the things that was holding you back was kind of fear, and the result was kind of stress. And I agree. There's all this like mental stuff that we're actually always battling. A common one I hear is like imposter syndrome. Whether it's imposter syndrome or something else, like what are some other kind of this mental hurdles that you feel like every entrepreneur needs to address to make sure that they can keep going forward?
Well, for me, I wouldn't quite call it imposter syndrome. I would call it, for me, it was fear of having to go back to the BBC, fear of having to go back to my job. And that stayed with me for a long time. And bizarrely, I still dream about the BBC. Like every week I'll have I feel bad using the word, but I have a nightmare that I'm back in the BBC and I have a program that I need to finish. So that was always my fear and my motivation. But I think one of the things that helped me a lot is I have a friend who said to me that he's been checking his financial balances since he was 15 years old. And that person is a very wealthy man right now. So I took his example, and I started every twice a week. I would just total up all of the money that I had in different bank accounts. So having that level of clarity and seeing where I was, I think that really helps. Understanding what is the worst case scenario, and I realized that the worst case scenario for me right now does not involve me going back to the BBC. And I guess that's another thing that really helps, is thinking what is the real worst case scenario. It's a stoic approach of what's the worst thing that can happen, and then asking yourself, can I accept that? And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about before of acceptance. If you can see the worst reality and you're willing to accept that, then a lot of the times it doesn't feel quite so bad. And somebody once said to me something that's very true, that really what we fear is at the root of it, it's damage to our ego. So in business, there's no chance that you're going to starve. If things go very badly wrong, you're not going to go to prison. Someone's not going to come to your house. Highly unlikely, depending on your business niche, highly likely someone's going to come to your house and beat you up in front of your children. You're not going to starve. Nothing really that bad will happen. You might have to live in a different place. You might not be able to eat at the same restaurants or in any restaurants, but you're going to survive. The real thing that people are scared about is damage to their identity, how they see themselves, and how they think other people see them. So I think that understanding that and seeing that, and again, accepting, is also very, very useful.
It's really good.
Very good. Phil, you had mentioned people and hiring as being a key factor in your success. Over that period of time of being, while you were being an entrepreneur, are there any resources that you would recommend handling in-house versus outsourcing?
My preference is always to be in-house for most things, for almost everything, except for things that physically aren't possible or take equipment that I don't have. For example, I'm not going to try and manufacture my own kettles, because that would take a lot of skills that I don't have and a lot of equipment. But generally, I would prefer to keep people in-house, and the crucial thing is to be able to understand what every person is doing, because the less you know, the more vulnerable you are to people taking advantage of you. And I know, because I've learned this the hard way. For example, when I first started out, I hired a PR firm. And although I should know enough about PR, having worked as a journalist, I kind of just left them to it, because they were out of house and I couldn't see what they were doing. And basically, I was paying them a few thousand every month, and what I was getting in return was absolutely nothing. So the danger of outsourcing when it comes to things like that is that you don't see what people are doing, you don't understand what they're doing, and it makes you vulnerable. But there are some things like warehousing, logistics, and manufacture that you have to keep out of house, and unless you're willing to really make huge financial investments, huge time investments, and learn new skills. But I stick to what I'm good at, and leave those other things that are more expensive and difficult to learn to other people.
Phil, what about personal life? What do you do to improve your personal life, maybe even professional life? Talk to me a little bit about that.
My personal life?
Yeah.
In what way?
In terms of, are there things that you do? So it seems like you're always working on improving your business, but I also feel like you are always working on improving your personal life, just your personal development, that kind of thing. Like, what are things that you do to kind of improve your life?
I think that being coached has been a complete game changer for me. So learning how to, I would say, guide my emotions rather than manage them. Just learning to be with my emotions and understanding better. That's been the biggest improvement in my life. Not hanging on things, being able to let things go. That's been the biggest thing. But there's a lot of other smaller things that make a difference to me, like taking cold showers every day, going to the gym every day. And I think that also the biggest thing for me is growth. If I'm not growing, or if I'm not learning, or if I'm not improving in some way, I don't feel good about myself. And that's not deliberate. I didn't choose to be that way. It's just the way I'm programmed. And I remember I was in the BBC at one point and I wasn't doing very well in the BBC. I wasn't progressing very much. And I tried to tell myself to just accept where I was. I thought to myself, you have a good job, you can coast by and not really have to work very hard, and you can keep your head down. You should just enjoy it. And I tried doing that for about 6 months, and it was the most miserable period of my life because I just was not growing. I was not going anywhere. I was not improving, and I'm just not wired that way. So growth in different ways has been very, very important. And also just being around great people. That's also key. People that inspire you, people that bring out the best in you, and people that teach you as well, people who are role models.
Awesome.
Well, I love to ask this question when I meet just really interesting people, but have you had any recent purchases? It could be a book, like an app, like a gadget, or something that you really enjoy or has kind of been a game changer in your life, something you use often. If you could kind of share a few of those things.
Yes, I'm very much in this mode at the moment because I'm in the process of furnishing an apartment and buying a lot of things. So it's making me reflect on the things that I definitely want and the things that are going to make a difference. This year, there's been two massive game changers for me. One has been an air fryer. It's fantastic. I don't have an air fryer right now, and the quality of my life has dramatically decreased. Being able to eat air fried broccoli, I think that every human should be able to do that. Air fried potato chips, air fried fries. That's been amazing. And also a robotic cleaner is amazing too. I like to walk around barefoot, and it wasn't really possible in my last apartment. My cleaner, I didn't realize it was possible to have floors so clean that you can walk around barefoot. Some other things that I'm looking at is I've just ordered a gigantic 49-inch wraparound screen. It's going to be like that.
Like a computer screen or a TV screen?
Yes, because I think it's going to make me more productive, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm always switching between different programs. Like I'm switching from Slack, Photoshop, Word, Excel. So every time I switch, I kind of lose a little bit of focus. And so I want to have everything lined up in front of me. Mm-hmm. It's either going to work great and make me 10 times more productive, or it's just going to make me less focused and more scatterbrained. I don't know about that.
We don't
Very cool.
Test it. Okay. Phil, can you tell me about a time when you thought, man, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, but then hindsight, it turned out to be the best thing?
Yes, I have a very good example of this. I had a live broadcast. I think it would have been around 2003, 2007, I think it was. I had a live broadcast in Wales, and long story short, I was live on air, and the people that I was supposed to interview were being interviewed live on air by a rival broadcaster. And I couldn't interview the family, and I didn't know what to do. And they were saying in my ear, interview the family. And I couldn't say to them, I can't interview the family, and I didn't really know what to do. So I just kind of rambled for 2 painful minutes. And then they let me hand back to the studio. And I can remember vividly when I handed back, I remember looking at the camera lens and thinking, that is the end of my BBC career. That is the end of my broadcasting career. And in a kind of way, it did turn out to be that way. I think that the trend of my broadcasting career was probably not going very well before that. And that was maybe the final nail in the coffin. And up until that point, being a broadcaster, being a TV reporter was all that I wanted to do. And so I was devastated by that. And it took me, to be honest, it took me a long time to recover from that, several years. And it felt like the worst possible thing that could have happened, because it was my dream to be a reporter. It was everything that I'd set out to do. It was what I'd been working on nonstop for a few years. And now I'm so happy that that happened, because if my broadcasting career had turned out the way that I wanted, I would be working in a newsroom somewhere, very miserable probably. I'd probably be complaining a lot, and I would probably be very, very unfulfilled. So that seeming disaster turned out to be one of the best things that happened to me.
I love that story. I think it's so great.
It's taken me a long time to be able to talk about that. For a long time, I couldn't even bring myself to talk about that happening.
I love it. Phil, we're coming to kind of the end of our time, and we ask everyone this question. What is a question that we should have asked you that we did not?
You should have asked me for my bank account details for where you're paying me for this interview.
That's a good one.
Very good. Well, I mean, that brings us to the close of this. I don't think we have any more questions. We'd like to let you guys know, this is brought by RiverSource Logistics. We are the largest 3PL on the West Coast here for FBA specific warehousing. We provide many services from inspection to unloads to shipping, basically anything you need. And yeah, that's all we have.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure you like and subscribe and follow us on social, and let us know if there's any topics that you want to hear about, and we'll bring those on in the future. Thank you so much.